This story about the afterlife is really frightening. It tells the tale of a young woman who suffered the anguish of hell along with another soul that died in the same car accident as her. Remember to keep an open mind to the teachings this afterlife has to offer as you read this novel. Before the NDE began to occur, because of the trauma I have experienced at the hands of those who don't believe me, I would like not to be recognized. It was around 2 years ago, yet I can still clearly remember it. I was getting into my pal Gareth's car. His father owned the car, and he was never meant to have it. I have no idea how he got hold of it. I remember that he had drank some drink earlier that evening. It was late, and I knew he shouldn't have been driving, so I needed a ride home. All the way there, we'd been having a useless dispute. In a fit of rage, he slammed on the throttle and tried a U-turn. In retrospect, I realized that it was just his way of scaring others into keeping quiet. That was his eccentric side. All of a sudden, I was being carried on a stretcher into a big room. I felt like I had been struck in the head and chest by someone. The following is incredibly comprehensive. I definitely forgot to do it. My path to everlasting life. A few seconds later, I started to drift out of my body and into an odd tunnel of light, feeling as though I was on some strange substance. I had no idea where I was, and I was sucked somewhere I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I was unable to stop or turn. It seemed like everything was fine for a moment. My thoughts about my imminent nirvana were suddenly altered by something. I was falling quickly by the time I got to the end of the tunnel, like if I had been hit by lightning. The feeling was so strong that it felt like I had fallen straight down into a black hole of some sort. It was so black that I assumed I could use a knife to carve it. As I fell further, I heard shouts, tears, terrible laughter, unbearable pain, and the foulest smell you can imagine. Blazing flames emerged from the darkness as I fell toward a gigantic furnace. A roaring fire swallowed me. There was screaming. I was yelling so loudly that I had no idea where my sound was coming from. I took a hard fall onto what felt like pebbles, and when I landed on my back, this new shape, whatever it was, started hurting all over my body. I knew I wasn't alone when I opened my eyes because strange creatures were grabbing at me. One by one, they grabbed hold of me and started to drag me in the direction of what seemed like huge black gates. I began flailing about, screaming for God, Allah, or Buddha, or anyone I remembered learning about in religious education classes to come to my aid. However, nothing came of it. I remembered distinctly feeling like there was a huge beast tearing at my back with what felt like razor-sharp claws. Another started tearing at my hair, and I started to feel sick. Another person pushed me to the ground and started to stand on my chest, laughing and making fun of me while bringing up delicate subjects that he seemed to know about, like my sister's jail, my mother's death at birth, and the fact that my friend Gareth was driving the car that killed me. I can still smell it clearly. It was as horrible as blackened hair and rotting flesh. Their sour laughter and jabs at me were almost drowned out by the boom of the flames. I heard cries and saw people running in all directions at that point. A group of kids no younger than 12 let out cries as these horrible animals frightened and tore them apart. That's when I suddenly thought of Gareth, the man in the car with me. He was nailed to the crucifixion and hung upside down, just like Jesus on the cross. That was something I had read in class a while back. Then the aliens, chanting in a language I could not understand, suddenly began hitting him. The fire was eating away at what he was strapped to, and already his hands, chest, and head were beginning to peel and melt. It was clear from his expression that he was afraid. He started crying and tried to beg them to stop. My body, or soul, if you will, began to burn from the fire that had been consuming this planet. I cried out, God, please help me. Once again, when this occurred, every time I cried out in God's name, they attempted to hurt me even more. The more enraged they became, the more agitated and frustrated they became. God, please. I begged them just before I made the decision to give up. Suddenly, I was being drawn away from them by a strong suction, which started to move me through the tunnel. Following the near-death encounter, I was startled out of sleep by a female doctor's voice. After 2 hours of resuscitation, she told me that I had fully recovered, but Gareth had not. His heart stopped beating as they were allegedly trying to revive him. It just gave up. He had made an official announcement of his death 30 minutes before to my arrival. After months of therapy in which I attempted to explain everything, a Pentecostal Christian friend of mine in college eventually broke down what I had seen. She gave me biblical texts that explained hell and what I had seen during our 2 weeks of counseling. Finally, I stood in the middle of my college campus and gave my life to Jesus Christ. I promise that even now, I can still smell the horrible smell of burnt flesh and hair. I used to feel ill to my stomach when I thought about Gareth and his location. I promise I still know where he is and what I would do to keep his younger brother out of that area, even if he is now 14 years old. Those in my family and social group who weren't believers continued to tell me that I had viewed too many scary movies when I told them my story. But this was not a movie. There were no credits or logos at the end. I apologize. This did in fact happen. I address it to everyone who reads it, hoping that it would act as a warning to those who have not placed their faith in Jesus Christ. After my near-death experience, I was made quite clear about what lies ahead for those who reject Jesus. I am eternally grateful to God for granting me another opportunity to serve Him in the wake of a catastrophe beyond the imagination of a movie or television show. Everyone who is unsure, do not wait until it is too late to find out the truth. It was me. Offer Him a name-based prayer right now. Take immediate action. I am 22 years old. I figure I still had a long way to go before something like this happened. Yes, I almost made a mistake. God bless everyone who believes in Him and in His Son.